In my last video I moved my animals, as well as the raining paludarium. I discovered that it had a huge amount of algae growing in the top, as well as mold in the canopy. For this reason, I'm going to have to dismantle it. I was on a budget while making this, so unfortunately I couldn't seal the canopy with something waterproof like I would have liked to. I could just do that now, but I want to take this opportunity to turn it into something even better. So let's get started. First order of business is to dismantle the raining paludarium itself. I'll start by taking off the canopy, as well as removing the front pane of glass. Then I'll start to take out the plants, moss, and driftwood. Luckily all the plants, moss, and driftwood look pretty good in this setup, so I'll be able to salvage most of them. However, I don't think I'll be able to salvage any of the rocks on the background, as they'll be covered in foam. Like I said in the beginning, I was on a budget while making this, so a lot of things weren't ideal. I'm really sad to be dismantling this tank, but it would have caused a lot of problems if I didn't. I'll definitely be revisiting this concept in the future though. When I do, I'll have a much better understanding of how to make something like this function long term. Anyway, I continued to dismantle the tank by removing the aquatic plants and sphagnum moss from the background. I'm not sure if I'll be reusing the tank itself, but if I do, I'm gonna need some ideas. Let me know down in the comments if you have any. I was going to reuse the filter from this project, but unfortunately I had the cord superglued to the glass and it got damaged during the process. Luckily I have another filter that I can use, but it's not adjustable like this one. That shouldn't matter though. I also won't be able to salvage any of the substrate in this tank, but that's okay because there wasn't that much in here and I have a bunch extra. Once I had all the plants and moss out, I started to dismantle the background. I want to make the next project out of materials from this tank, except for the stones and substrate. I'll still be using the same kinds, except I won't be able to use them from this for reasons I described earlier. After removing the background, I was done dismantling the tank. Now on to the new project. I have this cool glass bowl that I found at Target that I'll be using as the base for my project. I also have the new pump that I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, the tubing I have is a bit too small for it, so I'll have to modify it a bit. To do that, I just cut a bigger tube and stuck it in place. Now it's time for the scaping. Like I said, I'll be using the same stones as I did for the last project. My idea here is to create a sort of arch that's covered in moss and drips from the top. It was pretty hard to scape this because of the way everything is set up, so I had to try a few different techniques. I even at some point tried flipping the container over, that way I could get it elevated more. It was also hard creating an arch with a lot of flat rocks. I do have some that have a slight curve to them, but the majority of them are flat. Anyway, back to scaping. Unfortunately, I didn't have a whole lot of smaller stones left, so I had to break a few bigger ones. It was a very time-consuming and hard process to get this structure built, but once I did, I connected everything with superglue. Hot glue would work fine for this too, and you'll see me use a little bit of it later. I would have used it on the whole structure, but unfortunately I didn't have enough. You'll also see I superglued a few smaller stones to it to give it more shape. Even though it was a long and hard process, I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. Once the glue had dried, I carefully removed the structure from the sand. With the structure removed, I can start to make the dripping feature. I started by wrapping some cloth around the pump and setting it into the container. Then I filled it with sand and ran the tube through the structure. I made sure to leave a small hole in the rock so I could do this. Then once I had the tube pulled through, I draped it across the rest of the rocks and cut it to size. Unfortunately, I lost the footage, but I also cut a slit along the top of the tube. With the tube cut to size, I could hot glue the end to seal it off. Once the tube was in place, I started to add a few more rocks towards the bottom. I did this to create a smoother transition into the sand. Once the structure was complete and the scaping was done, I filled up the container and started to add moss. All of the moss you see here is the same stuff that was in the raining paludarium. Like I said, I wanted to use exclusively materials from that. Anyway, I continued to add moss, making sure to cover as much of the tube as possible. The idea is that the pump will send water up through the tube and out the opening on the top, and the moss will be draped over the structure to create a sort of dripping feature. Once the moss was in place, I added a few small pieces of ivy. Again, these were from the raining paludarium. Then I added a few small branches of spiderwood. I wanted to make something that resembled roots or vines growing over the arch with these. Here you can see that the dripping feature is active, but I'll adjust it a bit so it's not so fast. The last thing to address is lighting. Sticking with the theme of this build, I'll be using one of the puck lights from the raining paludarium. When one door closes, another one opens. That was my reasoning and inspiration for doing this. Like I said earlier, I could have easily fixed the issues with the raining paludarium, but I wanted to show that even though things don't work out sometimes, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a fail. Just learn from them and turn it into something new. That's exactly what I did here. I'm really happy with the way this one turned out, and although I love the look of the raining paludarium, I think this looks a lot better. Plus it'll hold up better long term and won't have as many issues. Also, like I said earlier, I'll definitely be revisiting the raining paludarium concept in the future. I'm not sure if I'll exactly do a raining paludarium, but I'll definitely do some kind of raining feature. Anyway, that's all I got for you in this one. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed and thanks for watching.